Chris and Dan show. What is up with you guys and gals? We got Solomon Timotheon. He's a highly accomplished entrepreneur, 17 years of marketing and sales. This is like marketing and sales, brand awareness. This is the world we live in, guys. All right, this is where we're at. He's the co-founder and CEO of One IMS, a leading inbound marketing and sales agency, as well as ClickX. He's helped double revenue of businesses using the 10x framework. Chris and I love the 10x rule. Grant Cardone's book changed my life. Solomon is an expert in lead generation and CAC, which is customer acquisition, as well as USA Today and Wall Street Journal bestselling author. We got to talk about the book too. So maybe we'll start with the book. I want to buy it. Like, what is it called?
So that book was actually made for entrepreneurs and more for marketing business owners. It's called the 0 to 10K Scale Playbook. As you guys know, first of all, thank you so much for having me on the show. As you guys know, a lot of people are leaving the workforce and going into entrepreneurship, and they all want to get to $10,000 in monthly recurring revenue. It's like the thing, it's a pretty good income if you were leaving a job. And I just basically made a step-by-step playbook. And I said, well, here's a 99 cents book on Amazon. This should definitely, if you execute what I'm talking about here, help you reach 10K, if not 20, 30K. And then we give them an award when they do. So that's what the book is, quite honestly. And it's something that I'm very passionate about, helping people make more money. And thus the book. Thanks for asking, Dan.
Oh, absolutely. Do you want to give like a background of who you are, and then we'll get into all that stuff?
Yeah, 100%. I think it would really, really help the audience. So I graduated college literally like the day after that. I started a marketing agency. Well, at the time, I didn't know what I was doing. I thought it was, going to be a business, but it actually was an agency because I was very passionate about building websites. Now, if you think about it, 2006 is really, really like back in the day, right? So at the time, people didn't have websites like we do today. Now there's a website for everybody, even family members and kids. They all have their own website today. But back in the day, we didn't have it, or we didn't have corporate emails. So because I was kind of a nerdy kid, I was able to learn HTML by hand, kind of like I did it by myself, didn't have any courses. There was no Udemy. Yeah. And then I started to build websites for people. I'm from Chicago, so like people around there, and they would pay me. I was like, wow, this is really, really good. And that led to us creating marketing, rather like lead generation, because it's only a matter of time, Chris and Dan, that people are going to be like, I got a website from you, but I don't really have any business growth. Like, what are you doing? I was like, all right, well, clearly I missed the mark. It wasn't the website that they wanted. They wanted more business. So that led us to learning digital marketing. At the time that you're talking about, Yellow Pages. That's what digital marketing was. So we were way better than Yellow Pages. We started to scale. And today, like I said, I not only have our own agency, I coach and mentor other agency owners and entrepreneurs to grow in their business.
So I have a complaint here. You said twice back in the day, referring to 2006, making me feel really, really old, Solomon. That does not seem too much back in the day. But point being that the internet, more specifically web pages, weren't as prevalent as they are today. Do you find that that's a key to business development? I mean, you said initially that wasn't the key. Would you say that's more of a key now?
It's certainly. So what I was talking more about back in the internet marketing days, right? At the time, Google was a budding company, and they're not where it is today. You're absolutely right. It is no longer who we are. Like, it's not about how awesome you guys are and what you do. It's whether or not people can find you and whatever it is that they do, whether it's in social, whether it's in Google, whether it's the Google News, Google Images. I mean, Google's like multiple, right? Like there's Google Maps. Can you get found on every single thing? And obviously Google owns YouTube. Can you get found on YouTube? And then the list goes on and on and on. And if we're not putting out content, if we're not putting out energy and time into building basically just another presence for yourself, we're not going to be where we really need to be, right? We talk about 10x, 2x, whatever it is. At the end of the day, I think it's not just once you build a website and that's it. It's about constantly investing into your online presence. People know this, but they just can't do it, if that makes sense. They need an expert. They need somebody else.
Certainly. So if you have a lack or no internet presence, you won't be successful, is what I hear you saying.
Right. You can only go to so many networking events and shake hands in physical world. You just can't really do the thing that you can do with what YouTube and Google and all of these tools are allowing people to do. And people know that, right? At the end of the day, you know your customers are out there looking for you. They have money to give you, but they don't even know you exist. We call that obscurity.
Obscurity. The enemy of business is obscurity.
So I'm going to take I don't know if this is where you want to go with this conversation, but I'm curious. So CNN was once a really large name in the MSM mainstream media bandwidth, right? They tried to develop an internet presence and it kind of failed. So one doesn't necessarily translate to the other, correct?
Well, like I said, I think it's firing all cylinders. I don't know exactly what they did, but if for instance, you guys, I'm going to give you an example. You're constantly putting out content, right? You're building your YouTube channel, and the podcast is putting out new episodes every single day. You have an episode page on your website. So your website's growing, your YouTube is growing, your podcast episode's growing. That's right. Dan's like, yeah. So you see how that's not just a one-time effort. You know what I mean? I'm sure you could take clips from here, turn them into short form content. So you guys have built long form content and short form content. So wherever I turn in this omnipresent world that we live in, like anywhere I go, there should be what you want to talk about. And if I want to follow you and you're not on a particular platform, you're going to lose me. That's the problem, right? Like if I'm an Instagram person and you don't want to put content on Instagram, you're going to lose me, but you might get other people on YouTube, but you're not going to get me. And in a world where people are now on Threads and they're not on Instagram, people are on TikTok and they're not on YouTube, we don't have a choice to be like, well, we're going to be here or we're going to build our own YouTube and we're just going to put our content behind a password. That just doesn't work anymore. We got to go out there and it's free to download, free to get, free to access, and see if we can attract the right people into our worlds.
So you must, and must is in quotes and capitalized here, must be on all platforms. What I hear you saying.
100%. If you plan on growing, if you want to keep you where you are, right? Like I said, you're doing exactly what you're doing. You might just stay where you are, or maybe even, grow a little bit, 20%, 50%. But if you really want to take it to where, like I said, where you're destined to be, then you need to fire all cylinders.
Yeah. And you don't even have to like the stuff. Like I don't like almost any of it. If it wasn't for the podcasts and stuff we do, I mean, I'd probably still have a YouTube to consume. I like YouTube to watch. And then I'd have a Twitter because I actually read Twitter way more than I post. But all this other stuff, man, I wouldn't be putting, even LinkedIn, even like Facebook, none of that stuff, Instagram. But it's not about liking. You have to separate what you like versus what's good for the business.
That you're absolutely right. Personally speaking, like I have two phones. On one phone, I don't have any social media apps because it's my productivity phone, right? Like it's there to actually, if you want to get a hold of me or send me an email, I'll be there. But there's another phone for the social media because I know you and I as entrepreneurs, if you sit there, you're going to lose hours. But we got business to take care of. So when it comes to posting a story, they use my social media phone to post the story. And I think that's another area that maybe entrepreneurs are struggling in because you're like, well, I don't know what to post. So let me just go consume 8 hours of content. Well, you're never going to be done. The goal is not to consume, is really to create.
Okay, so now you can make fun of me with the back in the day again. So you lost me a little bit there. So you have two separate phones. So the one that's your social media phone, you're using that to post content. Me, I use a computer. So
right. Well, I meant like making a story or posting a video or even commenting, anything that you want to do for social to develop your connections, relationship, so that you don't get sucked into it, right? Like that's the other thing, because all these relationships, they're posting too. So you're going to be like, oh, look, it's her 42nd birthday. And oh my gosh, it's so-and-so. And now you're just like 60 minutes later, you haven't done anything you're supposed to do for today as an entrepreneur, that is. So we want to separate the two. When you start getting into this, you want to have your focus time to actually work on the business And then when you're like you and I are creating content right now, but now it's a focus time creating content. And after this, we're not creating content. We're going back to business or whatever it is, right? So entrepreneurs struggle with that. When they're thinking about marketing, they think that now they have to become the marketing expert. I really don't recommend that.
Okay. So the second phone is for just basically commenting on different threads.
Absolutely. Or just
Okay.
overall engaging with your folks that you've gone in. See, I'm blessed to have a team around me. So they do a lot of lifting, and I'm sure you guys do as well. And if you're just getting started today, don't get, you know what I mean, frustrated that this is going to take 6 hours of your day and how am I going to make money? I think it's finding the right who is going to help you scale. Just like Dan said, I don't really like all these platforms, but it's going to help me grow my business. So I have to be there. But you don't have to do that yourself, is what I'm trying to say. Find the right people, give them phones or laptops or whatever it is. Let them do it on your behalf.
Find the right team, put them in place. You got to figure out what you like to do, right? Chris likes to do budgets and contract. Well, he used to like it. I don't know if he still likes the contract and budgets, but he's more on the project management side, and then I'm more on the marketing side. But you got to get in where you fit. But here's the thing, Solomon, with most small businesses, we actually tell them to do this too, and they don't do it. They say, oh, it seems so easy. Like, yeah, let's create a YouTube channel. And then they may even go and make 1 or 2 YouTube videos and they get like 2 views. And then they're like, nah, this doesn't work. I quit. Like they want the immediate ROI. And this is the furthest thing of what's gonna be expected.
Yeah, you couldn't be more right about that. I mean, here's the thing. I say this to practically everybody. If you're trying to grow a plant, you're going to put it, right? Like we have these little plants in our office. I'm not going to expect that thing to grow 4 inches in like 2 weeks. You know how much work it is to make that thing go like a ½ inch bigger? And I think if you take that kind of concept and think about your online presence, whether it's your YouTube or your podcast, like people aren't just dying. There's a content surplus to some degree. So if you really want to do good, you have to put out really good content and you need to keep going, because in my opinion, the content that's really good, it will go to the top. The cream is always at the top. So what's trending on X and what's trending on TikTok is the one that got the most engagement and the most comments. Do you agree? Because when you open up Facebook, they want to show you the most engaging content. When you open up LinkedIn, they want to show you the most engaging content. So if you don't create really good content, you're not going to get the views and the likes. So it's that time that you're going to take away from social media to work on creating something really good so that your content could be trending next. Until you get there, you got to keep going.
You know what else it is? It's too many people care about how they look or how they, like, let's say I'm just throwing a hypothetical. Chris, we just interviewed a CBD guy, okay? And I think he actually does a good job of marketing, but let's say I was him and I never did podcast or anything. I'd be concerned, like, well, if I only put out a video and it gets only 1 view and then I say the wrong thing, you know, it's like they're approaching it from a position of fear as opposed to a position of opportunity, because the reality is no one's going to watch it. Even if you say something horrible, no one's going to see it. The important part is just to do it and put yourself out there, and you get better, and eventually people will see it. But nobody wants to do that. They want to hire Solomon, you know, and get the quick, like they want a 10x right away, when that's probably not gonna happen.
Well, if they hire Solomon, what do I say? Go and start creating content. So everything goes back to the same thing, because I can't create it for them, right? I can probably get them more views because we can optimize it. But at the end of the day, I'm not the subject matter expert. You are, for your industry, for what you guys do with the clinical research and all of that. You both are the experts. I can't do anything about it. But if you came to me and said, hey, can you help me get more reach for what I'm already doing, what's already working, and I know there's more people that need to hear what we do, I said, absolutely. Let's look at what you're doing and see what we can do different. Do you see what I'm saying? Yep. But if you're not doing anything, I will tell you to start doing something. And it doesn't matter how long it took you guys, but that's exactly what everybody has to do.
Gary Vaynerchuk, who wrote the book Crush It in 2009. I read the book winter 2009. February of 2010, I decided to start my YouTube channel.
That's awesome.
It took me about a month to like sit on the fence. I was worried like everyone else. I'm not gonna get studies if I say the wrong thing. I was worried. I just went out and did it. He said back then, this was 2009. Okay. He said back then, we're gonna be in the very near future. He said, all small businesses are gonna be media companies first,
That's true.
and then whatever it is that they do. And he was absolutely right. The ones that have done that have been successful. The ones that haven't.
100%. I cannot emphasize that more. And by the way, we're a marketing company. We've been morphing towards a media company all these years. Like, it's really, really hard because as a marketing company, what do we get to do, right? Chris, we're your studio. We're your back office, right? You're like, here is my webinar, chop it up and get it to all my customers. We're like, yes, sir, we got it. And we got teams of people working on email marketing and all of this stuff. And when it comes to our marketing, what do? It's on the back burner. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's easy. And Gary's a great example of how he actually runs a business, and he runs his business on top of it. Like, it's always, his YouTube is getting so much attention. He's got an enormous amount of resources dedicated just for him. But it's really hard for more businesses to do that. If you're a dentist, what are you going to do? You're going to have all your people work on the dentistry business. Nobody's working on the marketing. They're all taking care of patients and picking up the phone or, right? The back office, whatever, to cleaning up the office. Rarely do we put enough resources to say, well, we only have so many customers. We want to 10x this. How do we do that? That's what Gary's was talking about then. He's talking about that now. And we've been consistently doing that. And I can only tell you, we produce way more content today than we did back in the day, but it's still a process.
What's the solution though? Let's say the dentist or the doctor, right? Small community clinic.
Yep.
Most of the people they hire are not going to create content. That's not what they were hired for. That's not even their skill set. Now, you might find someone who happens to like that stuff. So what should they do? Like, what's like the practical implementation? Let's say the dentist is shy, doesn't want to do it, but he's like, no, I agree, Solomon, we need to do this.
Before you answer that question, Solomon, though, I would just add, I would speculate the dentist doesn't want to 10x, right? They couldn't handle that flow. Medical's
multiple locations.
Sure, medical's probably a bad example, I would think, right? Because there's only so much time in the day. They only have so much time to dedicate towards seeing patients and things of that nature. I just don't think they can 10x. Even multiple locations is just very difficult to do so from a medical standpoint. I just think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think medical is a bad example of 10xing your outflow in terms of revenue, or inflow in terms of revenue, not outflow. I just don't think they have the bandwidth.
Well, like I said, I think it's about adding more capability, right? They can add more capability and they can grow. We worked with dentist office. It's funny that we say that. What they've done is, because they've gotten really good at marketing, other doctors would approach them and say, well, can I turn my brand into yours? Because yours is way more, people know your brand way more. So they started to take on other, it's like acquisition, right? They just started to buy other practices out, but the guy doesn't do anything. They're all working in their own offices, but it's all branded something of, whatever city is, ABC Dentistry, such and such city. But at the end of the day, I think it's adding more capabilities and also increasing the reach. You and I know we probably want to go to a dentist that's kind of sort of well-known, because we don't want to go to a dentist that nobody knows about and has poor reviews. Or does that make sense? You want to go somewhere where I believe that this doctor is well-known. And that's what we're talking about. How do we become the expert in our fields so that even other competitors sort of become your allies and, want to work with you at the end of the day? And I think that's very possible.
Yeah.
And let me also tell you that, yes, you're absolutely right. We struggle with entrepreneurs do not want to create content. They don't want to be on camera. They don't want anything to do with it, but they are okay. Kind of like Gary Vee has a D-Rock. somebody's taking some pictures or videos, whatever's possible to show, they're okay as long as they don't have to do it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They're okay if somebody's going to make stories and post things. They're perfectly fine with it, because at the end of the day, they are creating content internally. It's just not recorded. It's not uploading on a regular basis. They don't have a community or anything like that. But it's not that they're not creating content, or they're not having a special for Halloween, or they're not doing the New Year's party, or they're not. Does that make sense? They're
Absolutely.
creating new services all the time. They're buying new equipment, but they don't ever talk about it.
Yeah, and to echo Chris's, well, to add on to Chris's question about dentists or doctors, there are two types of clinicians. There's those that are trying to grow and through acquisition or franchising, especially in dentistry.
Right.
And then there's also, like, in the clinicians for private practices, there are cash-based procedures and cash-based clinics, and they are talking about how do we move away from like the traditional Medicare referral and more into the cash paying
Yeah.
patient who wants to hire in stuff that Medicare
Agreed.
doesn't cover. All of them have room for that, Chris. All of them do.
Oh, sure.
So someone like that would probably hire Solomon, even if they're not trying to scale their own business. They're trying to diversify their clientele.
Yeah.
And the way to attract them is to, sell them on, let's say, Botox or whatever it may be.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Med
but
Spas. We work
those-
with all those kinds of high-end services. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, that would make complete sense, and I absolutely agree with that. I was more kind of stating the insurance.
Oh yeah, nobody wants more of the.
Right, Medicare, insurance, whatever the case might be.
That's all another podcast as to why, but we're not going to get into that.
Yeah,
Well, at the end of the day, a small little corner of the community, they can only handle so many patients, right? Like there's
Right.
only so many appointment slots. But from a perspective of what is possible, I think you got to look at the guys that are, on real estate shows. Think about that. They're on selling whatever, New York. Well, they started off creating content in New York with apartment buildings that were, $200,000. And now they're doing, 8-figure, 9-figure deals and on TV. It's all because I think what we're just talking about, it's the media world. They became a media company first and then real estate second. And I think that's a perfect example of what small medical practices, medium size, but if they want to break into franchise, which I think is a really good way to scale, all of this is possible if they actually put getting out there first. And I think there was one thing that you guys were talking about where you hire a person and they're not capable of doing this. Well, that's one of the challenges that we all face, but it doesn't mean that you can't coach and train these people to do it or bring in a marketing expert. Almost every single client that we have, we're not all of their marketing department. We're working with somebody in their office who is dedicated to marketing in their business, like dedicated. Their direct report is the doctor or the CEO, whatever it is. And their job is, here's all the things that we're doing, of one of which is maybe paid ads or organic, social, whatever it is. But they have to hire somebody at some point. It's part of your business. Do we have a bookkeeper? Then we need a marketing person. Does that make sense? We're not going to run a company without bookkeeping. We're not going to run a company without certain roles, because when you're in business school, you have marketing, you have accounting, you have finance, right? Like that's a requirement, in my opinion. Now, it's up to the business owner, of course.
Everything. What's interesting is like everything comes in cycles, and we'll get to what you would do if you just walked into maybe our business, maybe our clinical trial one. We've kind of have that established, but maybe for our Chris and Dan show podcast, like,
Sure.
Maybe you give us advice. But what I'm interested in, and I've already been converted on this idea that's you got to do this, the next generation or the one after. So right now entering the workforce are like Gen Z,
Right?
whatever generations after them. I've been reading and hearing things that the theory is they're going to push back against all this social stuff. They're going to be the first generation where their parents use them as baby pictures to get engagement, and they're going to rebel. There's always a counterculture movement. Social media is a counterculture movement to mainstream media,
Right.
that Chris pointed out.
Right.
Well, now social media is mainstream, or at least we're going to be there soon. Maybe we reach the peak in a decade. I don't know. Eventually, there's going to be a pushback to something else. I don't know
Yeah.
what that is. The metaverse, who knows? But there's gonna be like, how do you stay? Well, first of all, what do you think will be next?
You
And
know,
then
it's
how
really
do you
hard to
stay current
tell.
with that stuff?
I think the you're absolutely right. There may be something where, we're just wearing our goggles and going about our day. It's very possible because we don't really know, right? I think if you follow a company like Apple, they'll have a way better idea of where. I mean, I think they're going to be part of the whole ecosystem. We're
Yeah.
not going to be, because we can't live without our iPhones. I apologize, any Android users, but like we can't live without it, right?
Chris.
So it's going to be something like that where we can't live without it. Can we live without Google? Well, there's going to be another version of Google but we still won't be able to live without it at this moment, right? We need oxygen and Google. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's like,
Yeah.
it's going to be exactly the same way. You're absolutely right. I don't think this is going to go on forever the way it is right now. I think there will be something where, like I said, our kids are going to invent it. We don't really know what it is because it's hard for us to create it. We can't see it. And if we don't see it, we don't believe it. But they see it. They're like, oh, dude, what's a screen with a device like this? That's lame. Why don't we just make everything into a screen? Everything is a screen, right? Like it might be something a little different. And I think we're close to that because I don't know, there's smart microwaves, there's smart toaster ovens, there's, you know what I mean? There's smart everything else. When is it not going to be smart, right?
Right.
It's already happening.
But to be pragmatic for the audience, like most of them are not even on this wave yet.
Yeah.
Which is, I guess, the challenge that you're trying to accomplish is, hey, you know what? Like mom and pop. Is your clientele like basically a mom and pop business that's trying to?
Yeah. Absolutely. So we have a small business division. That's what we call it. And it could be companies that are doing $3 million, right? $5 million. And then we have something with for mid-market companies. They might be doing 50 million, $100 million. They're a little bit more complex sales, long sales cycle. They need more systems, but the small business is the exact same thing, but just on a smaller scale. They have the same problem. One is just selling a bigger ticket item with a bigger infrastructure. One's smaller ticket item, less frequency, but it's the same challenge. They want to be seen, if that makes sense. They want more people to see them.
Yeah, and that's everyone's problem. And in an age where everyone's going after the same thing, it's very easy to see, Solomon. I really think you need, like, it's the strategy is one thing, okay, but the personality that's representing your brand. I've actually gave this a lot of thought because for my brand, like for Chris and I's business, right? I'm
Yeah.
basically the face. Chris is behind the scenes doing the operations. We can alternate here and there, but for the most part, that's like our roles where we do well.
Yeah.
For my site, Yuma Clinical Trials, we're trying to
Yeah.
build a brand too. I don't mind being the face, and then I don't
You are
mind
the
having right, and I don't mind having the girls that work for me also contribute.
Yeah.
Now, let's say I was an introvert, Solomon.
Yeah.
And my girl, the coordinator that works for me, I say, hey, we're gonna follow Solomon's advice. You're gonna go out and interview people in the communities. We're gonna have a YouTube channel. The risk that I would see is that I get dependent on her.
Yeah.
She becomes the face and then runs with the brand.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's a lot of business owners are gonna feel the same way. Like, how do we protect ourselves if we don't want to be the face? We have to put somebody, like, what's your strategy? Maybe pick a few people, or
Sure.
to where you're never dependent on one person, or what?
Before you provide that answer, I apologize, Solomon.
I
Just
love it.
so I'm thinking in terms, as you said that, Dan, what does KFC do, right? They have their secret recipe. It's kind of the same thing, isn't it? I mean, you can't be the colonel and make all the chicken, right? You have to provide people the recipe, right?
Mhm.
It's
Right.
kind of the same situation, isn't it? I mean,
Well, no, because when this example, let's use KFC. Let's say KFC is in a 2023 world as a startup. Colonel Sam, let's say Colonel Sam is an introvert. So he says, hey, Dan, you're going to go interview all these people. We're going to talk about chicken, and then we're going to build our brand. Well, I can get powerful enough to be like, hey, man, and you're seeing it with ESPN. All their
Right.
anchors are going out on their own. They're saying, I
100%.
don't need the platform anymore. I got my own audience.
I agree. Um, this is a challenge because again, we audit brands before we work with them, and we go through their previous content. And then because the entrepreneur, maybe they're just it's not even being about shy. They're just like, I'm an entrepreneur. I build businesses, and I don't need to be the face. Like I'm the entrepreneur. I'm going to build a business, right? Like so, for those brands where there was not a personal brand attached to it, they have this problem. It was a marketing person and they took another role and then they left. It doesn't have to be that they became the competition or anything like that. They just took another role because marketing people, what do? They get job opportunities almost every day, right? Like there's always looking for a marketing person. So they just take a role or want to work for a different kind of company or brand experience. Perfectly makes sense. So I think it's something that you have to do. And in my opinion, what I usually recommend is that this person should stay on with the brand long term. So offer them some sort of like ownership. Say, hey, if we grow and scale this thing, you're going to make way more money long term than just jumping jobs. Things like that you have to do because it is not uncommon, you guys, to see this in brands, their YouTube channel, their LinkedIn content. They had a really good person that was running webinars or doing something for them. And then that person leaves. Guess what happens to their marketing? Nothing. They have no content being uploaded. They have no community being built. I think it's absolutely a risk. So you have to know that well in advance that all of us are personal brands, like Gary says at the end of the day. And all marketing people, if you ever hire them, they're probably creating their own content because they like marketing. So you're already, you know what I mean? You're already exposed to this. And it's really up to the entrepreneur. What do they want to do? Are they okay with it? Then yes, great. If not, it doesn't hurt to give them a couple % of their business on paper because they're going to make way more money in the long run. And guess what? That's really what, aren't our employees really after that? Like to grow and scale with one business if they can and really make something out of their lives at the end of the day? I mean, so I try to do my team building, right? Give them more responsibility. Like you said, everybody has a secret ability, find out what it is and capitalize on it and make more profit as a company and give them a piece of the action.
What do you
Makes
think
sense.
about all this, Chris?
No, I
You
would
are-
agree. Yeah, I would agree with that. And I still think it's kind of the same example in terms of like having a business in which you have a secret, right?
Right.
Coca-Cola, KFC, whatever the case is. And I think the only way you prevent them from running off and selling it to your competitor or starting their own with that secret is you have to somehow capture them within the system of your business. And then the only way to do that is give them part ownership. And it could be as small as, like Solomon stating, 1 or 2%.
Yeah, it's also, they're not selling the secret. They're just talking about the secret.
Right.
I don't, like I said, your business should not have a secret that they can run off with at that moment. You really don't have any intellectual property. You don't have anything.
Well, because in this case,
what-
the face is the secret, right? Like whoever
Right.
you appoint as
Right.
the face of your brand, you're giving them power. Like their face is not replicable. Like AI is not here yet to where we can do that.
It's close.
It's
It's close.
close. And what do you think about that? AI is gonna
I
like
know.
take all this out of them.
That's another episode. I really think, like I said, our team was able to duplicate me to a pretty good degree and my voice. I was like, this is weird because I actually like creating content. I'm like, that is not the AI help I need. AI can help me in other ways, but this is not one where I need AI to be me because there's already me, right? Like there's not a need for another version of me. But they were like, Solomon, just wait. We're going to make all the content in the world. I'm like, no. Actually, I want to make the content. I want to say certain sentences a certain way because that's who I am, right? I don't want perfect sentences. I want, right? Like we don't want everything perfect because if it is perfect, then it's not us. Would you agree?
I would agree.
Right.
I think ultimately you're building a flywheel. The marketing is the biz. Like even what Chris and I did with our Clinker research stuff, right? Like we kind of reached a point where the marketing takes care of itself and customer acquisition just kind of comes without us thinking about it. I mean, we have to like still do sales calls and all that, but the leads come. We don't have to really spend money on leads. And then you invest more into what's working. So the flywheel gets bigger, faster. You got to invest also then in handling the new influx of leads.
Agreed.
the-
System.
The
Go
problem
ahead.
you presented, Dan, actually thinking about it, I can't remember the gentleman's name, but another podcast we did maybe 2 weeks ago, interesting guy, in which he was talking about how movies will be created and you can be the director, producer, everything for your own movie, where you pick who's doing what in the movie, right, and everything else. So I think the problem you're presenting, Dan, is probably a year or two away from being solved, right? You just take an image of yourself and say,
Yeah.
okay, I want this certain inflection, this tone of voice, and everything else, and you're directing yourself to make the content, right? And you're having AI do all of this for you.
But do you think as an influencer that works still? And this is for Solomon, because
If it's realistic enough, I don't see why it doesn't. But I understand it's for Solomon.
because well, what sells is authenticity, right?
Correct. I don't want to
So if
watch Gary's
you
AI version. I want to see Gary because he's interesting. He's
Right.
sort of like you can't predict him. He changes so many, he's a chameleon. He's got so many different personalities. And so I want to watch you two fighting and debating. That's why I come to the show. Or do you see what I'm saying? Like people develop this relationship of how you guys are different but same. And you created so many resources over the years to help me grow my business. And again, I think when you go to this AI version, it's all perfect. That's the problem. You never hear ChatGPT making a sentence mistakes or punctuality. Nothing. Everything is great. And I think when I read emails from marketers, I'm like, it just looks too perfect.
But
like,
you can,
where's the mistake?
I think you can still keep it authentic to a degree, right? By saying, okay, I want this part to be argumentative, right? Or I want this part to be sarcastic, or whatever the case might be. I think it's not too
so you're
far
saying
off.
to give the audience the choice of what they want their influencer to do.
Not necessarily, but I'm saying you, again, I'm using your example of an introvert, right? That's unwilling to get in front of the camera. They can still put themselves in front of the camera to a degree, and at least in my opinion, appear authentic by giving it certain directions, right? So I don't think we're too far off from that, in which content can be created by an individual that has no desire to be in front of the camera, and pretty much it'll be automated.
I just think
It's very
authenticity is gonna sell.
I think it'll still be authentic. I still think I still think we're not too far off from that being a possibility of AI, right? Where right now it's very robotic because it's not natural. It's all very very well, I guess perfect to a degree, right?
Yeah,
like you're saying with ChatGPT, but I think we're not too far off from that being an option, right? Where you can say, I want this to be authentic, right? Being genuine in terms of there will be some errors, or there will be some arguments, or there will be some whatever the case might be to make it authentic. I think you'll have those options. Yeah, bad jokes, whatever the case might be, right? Political incorrectness or whatever, right? To make it seem authentic. I think that's coming.
The only way for you to feed AI is to have all of the amount of content that you guys have created over the years and feed it. Otherwise, we have nothing to base it off of. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, that's kind of what ChatGPT and OpenAI did, right? They took the whole internet. It's like, here you go study it. So I think you guys are ahead of everyone else in being able to accomplish that. So Chris can make this podcast without being here, right? Because there's so many years of content of Chris, and there's stuff he wrote on Twitter or Facebook or whatever else. Once you feed that, I think there could be a pretty good probability of what Chris would say that AI can do by itself.
Very good argument. Very good. That's actually an incentive to get started now then in content creation. So maybe AI even makes people want to hire you more, because there's not going to be a data to build the algorithm off of.
That's the only way I could see it working, because at the end of the day, it's got to have structured data, which means that it's the same kind of content over a long period of time that you're feeding it at some point. Like I said, eventually it'll pick it up on its own, because Google's always leaving paper trails. Who is Solomon and who is Chris and who's Dan? All your social media profiles are linked. Google knows to who these days. If anybody's going to come up with it, it's probably Google.
Well, Solomon's links to Solomon's website is underneath here. Chris, you want to spring on the surprise for Solomon?
Put Solomon on
no.
the spot.
Every
know.
guest goes
Let me
through
get my
this.
AI version.
You're gonna need it. No, we want the real you here.
Yeah. So Dan and I started doing this about 3 years ago. And initially we were just reacting to music videos. Everybody likes music of some sort, right? So Solomon, we're going to put you on the spot. We want you to pick a song,
Oh, no.
preferably something Dan and I haven't heard that you like, but it doesn't have to be because you don't know what Dan and I listen to. A song that you like that maybe Dan and I have never heard of, right? Anything, and we're going to react to it.
Oh man, I gotta pick a song.
Yeah, you got to pick a
Oh.
song. Got to pick a song. We're gonna react to it.
I'm gonna give you the song that I graduated 8th grade with.
Well, there you go.
I believe I Can Fly, Space Jam.
And R. Kelly one. Okay. Chris, have you heard this?
Oh yeah. Space Jam. I used to watch that frequently with Michael
There you
Jordan.
go.
This is a great song and a tragic example of what can actually happen to an artist when they just lose control of themselves and of their impulses. Because R. Kelly was a talent like no other.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to find his actual video.
Yeah, that's that.
I think they like
songs.
wiped him clean off the face of the YouTube. Like
That's what's called reputation management. Service.
this is a lesson in reputation management.
Really expensive service.
I found a song of his live because I want to watch like the actual video. Dude, Solomon and Chris, they like wiped YouTube clean of R. Kelly. You used
Seriously.
to be able to watch I Believe I Can Fly. You can't.
Huh.
Yeah.
It's insane, man. That's all. You're right,
Interesting.
Solomon. That's a reputation management. That's maybe someone else for that one to
At the
contact.
end of the day, I think it's a great point that we brought that up. If you want to have clean reputation online, which I think it's the most valuable asset you can have, you got to create a lot of content, because the negative stuff has to be so much less than, does that make sense?
Yeah, it
It has to be
does.
so
It makes
much
so much
less.
sense.
Yeah, than all the 30,000 videos that Dan and Chris have made. That's the kind of, that's the route, if you ask me. It's hard to get rid of something that's on the internet. We know that. Once it's on the internet, it's on the internet.
Yep.
So if you have 10 million stuff on there, I think the probability of us getting rid of a couple things so much greater. And we run into that issue when we work with the company. They're like, well, there's this negative press about us. Can you get rid of it? I'm like, there's nothing else about you.
So there you go. If R.
Nothing
Kelly
else.
would have had a vlog or a podcast, like they couldn't have wiped all that stuff of him. Because
Yeah,
that would have
I
been
mean, you
his.
can email. You can get your Facebook page removed, your Google. There's a lot of, yeah.
Unbelievable. Well, anyways, we have to watch it live now. So here it is. R. Kelly, I Believe I Can Fly. I wanted to wait till that. I knew he was gonna do that. That run is legendary. Unbelievable. Great song, Solomon, though. This is like the motivation there. It's like enough to inspire, an
Hey, it's what I
army of
graduated
people.
8th grade with. So get
Eighth
something right.
grade? Jeez. I wonder when I think we're around the same age then, man. That's
Probably.
yeah, wow. Well, anyways, look, you guys go follow Solomon right now. You guys need to spread your wings and fly and stop dicking around with like thinking about doing something and how am I gonna grow my business, do more pay for click. All that stuff's fine, but why don't you take some of that budget and invest it in your own brand?
Yep.
Google don't give a damn about you. You just saw
No.
what they did to R. Kelly. They wiped the internet clean of him. Anyways,
They did. Yeah.
I'm done.
Might be deservedly so.
Of course, deservedly so. But the point is, these big corporations don't care about your brand.
No, this
You
is
need
true.
to care about your brand. And no one's investing in branding. Everyone's in
Oh, that's
sales.
not true. A lot of people are investing in branding.
The
Large
majority,
companies.
Solomon, the majority of small businesses out
Is it-
there.
No, small
Very-
business don't. That's
Very
correct.
results driven. Yeah, they're like, well, if I put $1 in, I got to get $6 back, and I can tell you it doesn't work because nobody knows about you, so no one's gonna go click and buy your Amazon, whatever it is, just because you made one product in the history.
Yeah.
Just hand
I'm,
to mouth, hand to mouth. That's
yeah.
all it is.
Yeah, it's
I will
you
move my hand only to grab a food and put it in my mouth. It's never to plant seeds. And you guys
that's
need
right.
to
You
stop
guys
dicking
are-
around and call Solomon.
You guys are
There you go.
investing in yourselves and your brand. You guys have so much content. I'm like enormous amount of value for the people that you're trying to serve. If everybody just follows the blueprint that you guys are doing, again, without expecting millions in back, you're continuing to put out there, and it's like seeds, right? Every seed is going to produce fruit. And if you think of it in that sense, you're going to have a harvest. If you never put out any seeds, you're not going to have any fruits, and there is no harvest.
It's absolutely correct. I mean, Dan, it took about what, 3 or 4 years?
Yeah.
Would you say?
More, man.
More?
3 or
Right.
4
A lot
years
of
just to
effort.
get me to like not want to quit. Like that's how long it took me. I was contemplating quitting 3 or 4 years.
Mm.
Yeah, it's what a lot of entrepreneurs do. Like you said, on day 2, they're done.
Yeah, but
They
that,
do, huh?
that's ridiculous. Yeah, they should go do something else in that case. Go get a job.
Yeah.
But anyways, thank you so much, guys. I got a jet, but Solomon, everybody go connect with him right now underneath this video. You need him. You guys don't even realize you need him. Like, subscribe, comment, share.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.